Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a minute for everyone to get added and sorted. Wonderful. All right. Well, greetings. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in for our panel on mental health and happiness in the digital era. My name is Nina Herscher, and I have some amazing panelists with me today who are going to be introducing themselves in just one moment. For a little bit more context, we want to talk about how with COVID, the shift to remote work has really accelerated the need for us to consider how happiness and mental health are intersecting with our digital wellness and our use of our devices. And so I am just over the moon today that we have this rock star group of panelists for you, and we're going to be talking to you about some personal recommendations about our own work, our own journeys, and overall how you can shift kind of your relationship with technology to fuel versus fatigue you. And so I will do a quick introduction for myself first, and then I'm going to hand it off to David J. And so again, my name is Nina Herscher. I'm CEO of the Digital Wellness Collective and the Digital Wellness Institute. The Digital Wellness Collective is the only global trade association of organizations and researchers who are doing this work full time. And the Digital Wellness Institute is an impact partner of the Social Dilemma. And we have a 10-week certificate program for people who want to get digital wellness certified with over 26 spectacular teachers. And so my journey with this work really came through my speech, actually. Growing up, I had a very hard time speaking, and I used eye contact to let people know I was trying to communicate with them. And I noticed a really big drop off in presence where sometimes people wouldn't even know I was trying to talk to them because they were on their phones. And so that is so much of what informed my kind of personal and professional journey and led me to examine and research how the norms of connectivity are changing and truly reconceptualizing how we develop as humans. And so with that, David, I would love to hand the mic off to you to just share a little bit about yourself, your job, and what brought you to this work. You're still on mute. One sec.
Sorry, there we go. My name is David J. I use he, him pronouns. I am coming in from Oakland, California, unceded Ohlone territory, and I am the head of mobilization at the Center for Humane Technology. So we focus on really helping people understand how the insidious experiences they have with social media, experiences that often lead to unhappiness, are part of a deeper system that's tied to how technology is built, the economic incentives that people are behind. And we work with people, largely with people in the tech industry themselves, who want to transform that system. We see our work as kind of one part of a much broader fabric that's needed to shift a lot of what you were talking about, Nina, in the daily experiences we have with our own balance, with our own relationships, with our own happiness, that our technology is one important piece of, but by no means the only relevant important piece of. And our work includes a podcast, which I recommend you all check out if you're curious about going deep with these issues, called Your Undivided Attention. It's at humanetech.com/podcast, or kind of wherever you podcast. We're also about to put out a course called Foundations of Humane Technology that's really aimed at people who are working in and with technology to help them understand how to build it from a fundamentally different stance that honors our humanity and aligns with our need for connection and happiness and balance. And so with that, I think I'll pass it off to Emmy.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Emmy Kim. I am 17 years old, and I use she, they pronouns. I am the director of the LGBTQ+ initiative and the co-host of the podcast Log Off and Listen Up, a part of the Log Off movement, which is a movement for teens by teens that talks a lot about issues surrounding social media and just digital wellness in general. I started working in this field because I've seen the harmful effects of social media, not only on myself, but on communities that I identify with. And I felt the need to help change my generation's technological habits. I'm really excited to be here because I think it's imperative to hear from all age groups. And I believe having a high school student on a panel like this is a step in the right direction. Having a perspective and personal experience from a teenager can help open the eyes of adults everywhere.
Thank you so much, Emmy. Mar, I would love to hand it off to you.
Hi, thank you, Nina, and hello everyone from the south of Spain, where I live. I am a journalist by trade, and but not your typical journalist that just writes articles. I used to be a data and investigative journalist, and I led teams of developers and data journalists to dig data and expose stories around what we found in data. And I led the technology and data team at the Panama Papers, which is the investigation that won the Pulitzer Prize and that has had a great impact, I would say, among the greatest impact in journalism by a journalistic investigation. And we exposed how the rich and the powerful were hiding money offshore because we dig into the largest leak in journalism history. The reason why I'm telling you that is because I was hyper connected. I was connected 24/7 pretty much. The cell phone was the first thing I saw in the morning. Last thing I saw when I went to bed at 2, 3 a.m. I would be sending messages because I was working with a global team, and that led me to burnout. And that's actually why I'm in this field right now, because after burning out, I realized that my hyperconnectivity and the bad use I did of my connectivity and the lack of digital boundaries led me to this feeling of being burnt out and mental health issues and also physical issues. And that's why I now try to raise awareness about how to have a healthier relationship with technology. I did the certificates with the Digital Wellness Institute, and I'm now a certified digital wellness educator. And I try to do my bit with a few initiatives that I have pushed for. I co-founded an initiative called the Selfinvestigation that helps journalists have a healthier relationship with stress, with work, and with technology. And I've also co-founded an institute in Spain, the country where I live, to have a healthy conversation around responsible artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Mar. We're so happy to have you with us. Kim Carr, I would love for you to introduce yourself, and then we will hand it off to our other youth leader.
Love it. Yes. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Kim Carr. I'm the executive director and co-founder of #ICAN. And our mission is we truly bridge the gap between students, schools, and companies. When it comes to the 3 areas we focus on is on empowering digital change makers, promoting digital safety, and then we get to celebrate. This is my favorite part, is we get to celebrate youth innovation, like when they do something cool online. So when they make podcasts, like Emmy mentioned, we get to celebrate that and showcase it and highlight it. So just those are different pieces that we do, that we bring that together, because there is so many negative stuff. I taught middle school for 13 years and just kept seeing all the massive issues that were going on. So had to start working side by side with students, not in front of them, knowing more than them, and not behind them, right? Knowing less than them, making sure we're working side by side with them, because we truly believe that students need to be part of the solution on what is going on with our world to keep making the world a happier place. And I think that's where we're at. So I'm super honored that we've got 2 amazing students on this board. So thanks for having me today.
Thank you. Kyla.
Thank you so much for having me this morning. Just like how Emmy kind of said, I'm 21. I'm a rising junior at Stanford. I actually chose to take a gap year, and I spent the first half of the year at, I guess you could call it a think tank incubator. It was pretty much a quarantine bubble of a lot of young women who are college students right now. And we spent time thinking about big problems our generation's facing right now. And one of them actually digital wellness. And I had interned at Facebook that past summer, and then I watched The Social Dilemma, and then I began to have a dilemma about, okay, what am I doing to contribute to the unhappiness of people our age, particularly how it relates to technology use, social media use, etc. So I formed a group. We started a social app that we like to call one-tap social planning for Gen Z. It's called CrowdSurf. We're currently figuring out our MVP right now. And we actually were one of 12 teams to get a grant for Lookup, which is pretty much another 6-week program that helps different teams of young people making products to actually help with digital social wellness. So this is actually right up my alley right now, and I'm really excited that I'm working on this as I'm on this panel. So I have a lot of in progress, I guess you could say, perspective. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing. So my first kind of question to officially kick off and tap into the wisdom of this group is I'm hoping that you can all share with our audience, what is the biggest change that you've made with your technology usage that has positively affected your mental health and happiness? David J., would you like to start us off?
Sure. I'd say there are two things that I've done. One like philosophical and one very tactical. I think the philosophical thing that I did several years ago, I come from a background of relational organizing. That's very much about movements, and it's very much about the work of building relationships as the core of what creates happiness in our lives, and also what creates movements with the power to change the world around us. And I started looking, I was using Facebook, I was using Twitter, I was using some of the, several years ago, these social platforms. And I started saying, okay, when is this contributing to a relationship that matters deeply in my life? Like when am I ever, if I'm spending time in this, when am I getting information that impacts a deep conversation that I have, or that leads me to have a deep conversation? And I found that it was pretty low. Like I was the time I was spending the platforms wasn't really impacting the relationships that mattered, and so I tried to pare down to just the engagement that did, and that meant that I wound up not spending much time on feeds, which I think I'm really grateful for, not having learned that habit. And then the other piece, I think the one exception to that for me became YouTube. Like I would use YouTube science videos to procrastinate, and so I went and got as far as I could from YouTube's recommendation system. I downloaded plugins that took away all the recommended YouTube videos. I turned off autoplay. I did everything I could to say, like, okay, sometimes I want to go in to learn about a thing, but I don't want to get sucked down the rabbit hole. So how do I make sure that their ability to pull me there is turned off?
Thank you for sharing that. That's so powerful. And I think that it's also a great example of how we can use tech such as a plugin to have a healthier relationship with tech. And that isn't always intuitive. But I think that's something that we're working on. And I love that you all are working on over at the Center for Humane Tech, is how can we really create technology with the human in mind? And so I think we're going to see a whole new wave, especially with so many people working from home and being so intimately acquainted with this topic more than ever before. Kyla, I would love to hear from you.
Can I add one point to that that's just important to our work, which is whenever we hold up technology as a solution, it only works when complementing the social side, when complementing support, when complementing the human side. It's never the solution in and of itself. But sorry to Kylie, I'm very excited to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely. Thanks for chiming in with that.
So I think that I feel like I have probably a slightly different experience, just because I'm sure that Emmy could relate. We are like the first generation to grow up deeply, deeply ingrained in tech. So it, I think, takes more of, at least from my experience, a concerted effort to get off of that tech, to make it not an active part of our lives. So actually, past fall, I spent some time deleting Instagram. And that was actually a big deal for me. I was like, okay, this is an app that isn't actively making me happy. It is actually helping me compare myself to others. It is spreading information that may or may not be factual. It's not really a net positive for me. So I said, okay, it's time to just delete that. And so I got rid of it for about 2 months. I inevitably re-downloaded, as do most people our age, after deleting Instagram. But I actually learned a big lesson, which was, one, it's not necessary. And two, that there are different ways to engage with it. And in acknowledging that in order to stay connected, that doesn't necessarily mean scrolling for hours at a time. And I think that, of course, with remote work and everything like that, it's pretty difficult to actually see people. But I realized, oh, I'm actually looking to engage with others. why don't I actually try to engage with others instead of looking at the posts that they're creating? So it's been a lot of going out of my way to schedule Zoom calls or like meeting people outside. I just realized that I needed to make more of an active effort to see people in person rather than making an active effort to see what they're doing through Instagram or Facebook. So those are like two small changes that I've made these last few months. And I think it definitely has made me a lot happier. And I'm excited to see, I guess, how I could keep pushing forward in that direction in the years to come.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love to kind of hear what your experience is. And sometimes we'll delete something and then we'll add it and then we'll use it a little differently. It's just kind of a journey. But what I also love about this particular group of people here today is that we're all community organizers in our own right. And a moment that just keeps happening, and every time it happens, it's just as powerful, is when we're talking about this and we're normalizing it for other people. And there's that aha moment of, oh, yeah, tech kind of makes me feel overwhelmed or overstimulated or all of those other things. And I'm not alone in that. And then finding these communities with these spectacular resources to really support them. So thank you all for being that and for creating those resources. Mar, I would love to hear some of your kind of tips and personal experiences around this.
So I've been doing remote work for the past decade. When the pandemic hit, I was already a veteran of remote work. And what I saw when I stopped working because I burnt out was that regardless of the fact that I had no work because I had quit my job, I was still checking email all the time. And other social media, in my case, it was especially WhatsApp, which is actually a social media that we use especially in Latin American countries, and Spain it's included there too. We use it a lot, even for work. So it's actually complicated because it's work and personal all in the same app, which makes it complicated. But I thought, oh my God, why am I checking emails so much? And so basically my main change has been using email in a different way and basically being very, very radical, which is having email closed by default. I'm a journalist, so I'm used to being available 24/7. And I think that other people that might be listening to us that are in other very intense professions like lawyers or tech developers or people that believe that connectivity is part of their job might relate to my experience. And the fact is that data shows that we spend on email between a third or a half of our working day, right? So basically what I do now is I have email closed all the time, and I only go and check it in batches. I do batch checking. So I check my email at the beginning of my day, at the middle of my day, and at the end of my day. And I have Gmail, so I've installed a plugin or an add-on that is called Inbox When Ready, that basically keeps my inbox closed. That way, if I open it, I still have to do a few steps until I check my email. And this has been very, very, very helpful to me to change my email use. I also have email off my cell phone. And that way I have to proactively go and check that on my computer when I'm working. By the way, speaking of email, I totally recommend Cal Newport's latest book, A World Without Email, which I'm sure that some of you might be reading, but it's actually a great book about how we should rethink the way we communicate in work. So what are the workflows? What are the communication flows in work settings? And it speaks about the fact that we should not be available 24/7, or at least during working hours. So that's what has changed my life recently.
Thank you for sharing that wisdom. I think it really speaks to how when we carve out kind of that time for deep work, we can actually accomplish more and be more productive than if we're just on call every day and our fragmented attention is active. So thank you. Kim, would you love to pipe in?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm loving this conversation because I think it's so important. here's some stats for people need to know, right? Is anxiety and depression have increased 37% since smartphones kind of came out. And you think about it, right? Like how many guys have freaked out because you sent a text message to the wrong person before? You're like, oh gosh, like I totally sent that to like the wrong person. And it like can be taken the wrong way. Or even like you get put in a group chat and sometimes you don't know who it is. You're like, who's in this group chat? What's going on? Or it's like super awkward. They start talking about things. You're like, this is getting awkward. Or just completely just blows up your phone and you're like trying to get things done. So again, that's why anxiety has kind of have gone there. And then even depression, like why that's there is because we're constantly comparing ourselves to others because everyone only posts like their highlight reels of like what they're showing, right? And same thing, the other stat people need to know is, and why we work with youth so much is because suicide now is number 2 cause of death nationwide in the United States for 10 to 24-year-olds. And it has a lot to do with the comparing, right? Of like seeing everyone's best life and that kind of a piece. So we try to teach students is like, you have the control, you get a control of your life, right? You got to start controlling your device so you can have that control back on your device. And so, yes, I love hearing students' answers of like putting your device down whenever you can, that they put it on do not disturb. They even hide it when they're doing homework, right? It's like, so it's far away so they can't reach it. They're doing things like even putting it on, you can put it on black or grayscale so that you can't see color because it tracks you. They're doing really cool, creative things to be able to have that. You can put screen time on. There's so many different cool tips that they're using. And the thing I've been doing, honestly, as I think to kind of add on to what Mara was saying is like, I actually honestly schedule time, for myself, and I schedule social time with my friends. Like I make sure it's on my calendar that I have that. And I make it very known whenever I am, it's on my calendar. Everyone has my calendar who needs it. So it's very clear that this is not like this is my do not disturb time, so it doesn't get bothered. So I think that's the biggest piece. And I love that this is called the Worldhappiness Fest. And like how I create my happiness is by controlling that. So that schedule your happy hour, wherever your happy hour is, schedule it in your day. And I think that's where people can, have a more positive and happier life.
Thank you so much, Kim. I love your tip. We do a lot of work with Nir Eyal over at the Institute, who wrote a book called Indistractable. And a lot of his work is really kind of supporting this idea that we need to put appointments on our calendar for self-care, for time with ourselves, and not let anything overtake those blocks. So treat them as they're just kind of as if they were just as important as if you were meeting with like the president, and just, really making sure that you're honoring that this is your time for you, and creating this time is going to help you feel better, more focused throughout the rest of your day. Emmy, do you have anything that you'd like to chime in with?
Yeah, so I, similarly to Kyla, have, deleted Instagram and deleted Snapchat and other things, but a lot of my school's announcements for things like clubs and just general organizations do use social media just to keep everyone in check, because in this day and age, everyone has an Instagram account. And so what I actually chose to do was to turn off all notifications on every single app on my phone. So I do miss a lot of messages from my friends, but I use just like regular messaging apps, and I tell people, just call me. Like if you need me, just call me, because that is something that I know I can check without taking the risk of being distracted. And during school breaks, like summer break and spring break, I delete all of my social media apps. So I don't use them at all. So I have social media only during the school year for the sake of school. And I actually checked just the other day, because I was curious for myself what my average screen time was per year. And on social media, every single day, I have managed to keep my screen time under an hour every day for the past 3 years, which sounds insane for someone my age, but I found that has helped me so much, because instead of spending 3 hours scrolling on Instagram or TikTok, I'm working on something like this. I'm doing my homework. I'm doing this and that adds so much more to my life and brings me so much more happiness than scrolling on a social media page could ever. So I think that was the biggest change. And I honestly was curious if Nina had any tips.
Thank you. And those are some amazing tips as well. There's so much wisdom in this group. I think the biggest really change that I've made is actually blocking out time in the morning and the evening and not just talking about it. Because I run 3 companies, I could easily be on 24/7, and there are days when I am. But in general, I reclaimed my mornings and my evenings because I had to in order to, maintain my sanity and protect my mental health. And so what I really recommend to people is carving out half an hour or more in the morning and the evening to take back your peace of mind, to take back your retreat, relaxation time at home. And part of that is through actually creating the physical environment to support that behavior change. And so, for example, we have an unplugged box in our household located over in the kitchen. And it also kind of serves as the place where we charge everything. And so in the evenings, there's kind of this collective accountability of our devices get left in that unplugged box / charge station. And that's our time to recharge ourselves. Something else is that when we're falling asleep, we're actually in a very light state of hypnosis. And these kind of theta waves put us in this twilight zone where we're sometimes half awake, half asleep. So if we're exposing ourselves to something like the news or something that might not make us feel that wonderful inside, it's going to trickle in that much more and have an impact on how we feel. And so kind of practicing that tech hygiene with your routine, very, very powerful. For some people, it does mean that you might have to wake up half an hour earlier, but in my experience, it is absolutely worth it. So that is one of the biggest tips I can give everyone. I know that this is going to be streaming on all different social platforms, so we're going to expect some questions from those platforms from the production team at the end. But before that, I'm really hoping to go around and have you all share a little bit more about what kind of concrete resources your different organizations and campaigns offer so that people can get involved. Kim, would you like to start us off this time?
Yeah, let's do this. Get so many resources on our website at icanhelp.net. The number one thing, I think that people have been we teamed up with Providence Health out of Oregon to be able to make free curriculum for schools and students to be able to go to, because there is just, again, mental health is such an issue that we need to make sure we're all talking about it. 1 out of 5 people have some kind of mental health issue, and 5 out of 5 people, though, have mental health. So it's so important that we start talking about our mental health more, and that we all have that conversation, no matter if it's awkward or not, like make it less awkward and break that stigma of mental health is so important. So on our website, and we teamed up with Providence Health to be able to create lessons. So there's free PowerPoint presentations with the facilitator notes along with it, with student guidelines that you can fill in the answers, and then even some social media posts as a follow-up so you can continue having that conversation. So the first lesson, which is one of my favorites, is about self-care and mindfulness, because we can't help others until we take care of ourselves. So it just walks you through making an emotional first aid kit, right? Like what is in my emotional first aid kit? It's my first one is music. Like I love music. It just makes me happy. It can completely change my mood. The second thing is even like sights, right? So even a screensaver on your phone, like my screensaver right now is my niece and I. So it's just cool to be able to, whatever makes you happy, you can go to that emotional first aid kit and be able to change your mood. So it just walks you through that. The other ones that are in there is about anxiety and depression, stress, and then the last one, and we're adding more. Like we're just going to be building grief is the next one we're gonna launch. But the last one that's on there right now is ECPR, which means connect, partner, and respond. Because a lot of these students they're not going to adults. 49% of students don't turn to adults for help. They actually turn to their peers. So now you've got 13-year-olds turning to 13-year-olds and 17-year-olds turning to 17-year-olds, and they're not going to professionals. So if they are self-harming or suicidal, they're not getting the professional help they need. So we've created a lesson to be able to talk them through it, and it's meant to be peer-to-peer. So all the resources on there is meant to be peers doing those lessons to their peers and having these harder conversations. But we make them super easy and very engaging and interactive, so it can be taught. So that's our big one resource that's on there. But we also have a 21-day digital wellness challenge that we get schools and individuals and parents to do at home. It's literally 21 days of, hey, what can you do? So everything from, can you get rid of one social media platform, like both Kyla and Emmy kind of talked about, and getting rid of something. I had a counselor who says, well, I don't really use social media. I'm like, but I see you on Candy Crush a lot, right? So can you get rid of that game that you play constantly? And they did. And then the other ones on there is like, even unsubscribing from emails that you probably need to unsubscribe from, or can you set your timer on your phone, or it's just simple stuff that you can do. Even like I think Nina said it before, is like not checking your phone before you go to bed, an hour before you go to bed, or not even plugging your phone in next to your bed. Can you do that challenge? Or even not looking at the first thing. Most people, when they wake up, they look right at their phone. Can you do something different instead? So that walks you through the 21-day digital wellness challenge. Is definitely our resource that's on our website. And we're getting schools, the entire PE class is doing it together, or like clubs are doing it together. Parents are doing it with their kids. So it's super fun to be able to see that change of them using our resources that are on our website.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kim. Mar, I know that you mentioned the self-investigation. Can you tell us again that full website URL and the other organization that you just launched?
Yes, thank you, Nina. The reason why I co-founded the self-investigation was to help journalists disconnect somehow and have a healthier relationship with not just technology, but also work. The statistics of how the pandemic is affecting journalists are really dear, because 70% of the journalists that have been interviewed in big studies done by Columbia University basically say that mental health and the emotional and psychological impacts of COVID-19 has been among the top challenges they've been facing. And as you can imagine, like, journalists are actually among the frontline responders of the crisis. And the problem is that most newsrooms have not been assisting these journalists. In that same report that I cited, done by the Tao Center, 62% rated assistance with managing mental health and well-being as an important or very important need, and most of them were not getting it. So that's why we created the self-investigation, to support these journalists and start destigmatizing these issues around mental health. Because in journalism, we believe that we are supermen and superwomen, that we can do with everything, and it doesn't matter how hard the reality it is, that we can deal with it. So the selfinvestigation.com is our platform to train journalists to have on how to deal with stress in a healthier way, and also with technology. In the selfinvestigation.com, we have resources in English and in Spanish to train journalists. But really, the resources that we have there and the online programs that we do could also serve other professions that are very passionate about what they do, such as social entrepreneurs or other type of professions where passion is the driver. And I think that one of the things that I try to do is to try to raise awareness in the Spanish-speaking world. There's very little resources for Spanish-speaking communities in Latin America and in Spain on mental health and the effects of technology in our mental and physical health. So I actually have a column in a newspaper called El Confidencial that it's about e-healthy habits, so how to have a healthy relationship with technology. In Spanish, it's called Tecnosaludables, and I try to raise awareness there about these issues. And then we also, the other initiative that I co-founded, it's called Odisea, very difficult to spell, ODISEIA.org, and that's basically the initiative on responsible artificial intelligence in Spain. We mainly are a hub of players and stakeholders that are developing or pushing for ethical artificial intelligence and its social impact. The website doesn't have much, but if you come from a Spanish-speaking community, either in Spain, in the States, or in Latin America, feel free to reach out, because we're trying to put together all the players from the Spanish-speaking world to have these conversations also in the Spanish-speaking world, which is normally not that used to having these conversations.
Thank you so much, Mar. Those are some incredible resources. Kyla, would you like to share a little bit about kind of your kind of journey? I know that you're taking a little break and you're heading back to school. Is there anything kind of concrete that you would like to direct folks to?
Yeah, so I definitely do not have the same types of resources as everyone else, but I would say that if you do want to see what groups of young people are doing to combat the health that, I guess, digital social media sources are not providing us with, and seeing like healthy alternatives that young people are creating, I would definitely go to lookup.live. I'll send the link later on. But there is my team of 4 doing the social planning app that I mentioned. And then there's 11 other teams who actually also received grants, who are working on projects that'll actively combat mental unwellness with people in Gen Z and beyond, and just some active work being done to combat, I guess, the effects of social media today. So I would say, again, lookup.live. There's 1 pages for each of the teams. It'll just be awesome to get a little way into seeing what's happening, because it's just a small amount of everything that's going on right now to combat this.
Wonderful. We look forward to seeing this project that you're working on. And I know Susan very well, so you're in great hands, and I'm sure that your team itself is full of passion and expertise. So thank you so much for sharing. David, I know that you mentioned the podcast. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the resources at the Center for Humane Tech and anything that you might be working on personally?
Yeah, there's 2 resources that we've just recently put up that I think are really relevant to this conversation. The first that I just think it's great background reading for this is something we just put up on our site last week called How Social Media Hacks Our Brains, which really goes through the psychological research on how social media is crafted to be addictive, and then the impact on our wellness of that section of our brain just getting hit over and over and over and over again by these tools. The second thing I'd love to point out, I think very much in line with what Kyla and Emmy have been talking about, is we've created a campaign called My Social Truth, which is for young people to share stories about the relationships, the complicated relationships that they're having with social media and the experience of getting off of social media when they choose to. And that's because we found that, as many of us have been saying, there's really powerful tools, there's really powerful guides for how you can unplug, but a lot of people feel really alone in their relationships, and just being able to read stories from others, being able to read those stories and inspiration to sit down with your friends and have a conversation about your relationship with social media and how you want it to change. That work is an incredibly important piece of this transformation. And we want a resource that's at socialtruth.humanetech.com, a resource that helps people with that.
Thank you, David. That sounds amazing. Emmy, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat as Kayla. I don't have all of the same types of crazy great resources that, David, Mar, and Kim can provide. But I do know that on our website, logoffmovement.org, we are currently working on a curriculum that we are trying to implement in some schools, because we have members in the movement that are from all over the world. We're finding that there are a lot of schools and a lot of students and a lot of administrators that are in need of a curriculum like this that just don't have access to one. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make a curriculum that is from a bunch of young kids, because kids understand what kids are going through best. So we are trying to develop different programs, different activities, and different worksheets and all those great things that can help teach to help lean off of dependency on social media, we're trying to start with different levels of these programs. So we're creating a elementary school level where we're introducing the idea of social media and having these kids understand that, you know, the likes ratio and the number of views you get isn't everything. And a more middle school level where some kids already have social media and others are still getting exposed to it. And also a more high school, college level where almost everyone knows what social media is, has social media accounts of their own, and just need help getting off of it itself. As the director of the LGBTQ initiative specifically, right now I have a lot of events that are still in development, that aren't fully announced yet. So this is a little bit of a sneak peek, but I am trying to find ways that I can almost create a tiny community of people of queer teens who want to find a community, are afraid to go on social media to find it. Because a lot of queer individuals, when they go on social media, they're looking for other LGBTQ individuals because they want a sense of validation. However, when they go online, there's a lot of times where they are met with backlash. So my goal as the director is to create a space where I can find all these people, bring them in, say, you are valid, you are loved, and show them everything that is great about being queer. And so they're the two big things that I'm on, but there are a lot of other resources and things that are on our website, logoffmovement.org, and all the information that you might want to look for is all on there.
Thank you. It sounds like we have a lot to look forward to, so we'll definitely be checking back with you. There are just a few resources that I'd love to highlight as well. Working with everyone here, the list can just go on for days. Something that we're excited to come together around is last year we launched Digital Wellness Day. And Digital Wellness Day is a little bit different than National Day of Unplugging, in that Digital Wellness Day is explicitly empowering people to hold online events and talk about what the healthy tech relationship looks like through using tech. And so some people may choose to unplug, but it's much more about kind of community organization online and having these conversations. And so we launched it last year. This year we have a much different event directory. And so anybody can contribute to the event directory and we'll be happy to advertise your event for you. Last year we had over 100 events. And so you can check out Digital Wellness Day free resources, our e-toolkit that reached 1.2 million people last year at digitalwellnessday.com, and you can register to get involved. We also have the Digital Wellness Certificate course that Mar mentioned. And so we just wrote an ebook that was on Amazon over the weekend. Big thanks to everybody for their support. And that is available at 99 cents through midnight tonight. And so everything is kind of connected there, but we always have free resources in addition to paid trainings. So definitely check those out. And as we kind of approach our last 10 minutes together, we do have a few questions from the audience for some specific panelists. So we have a question for Mar. Mar, how can we raise consciousness for journalists, as journalists are key to bring perspective based on hope, which we know is very much needed today?
To me, the key is to challenge some of the ideas that we have about what being a journalist means. And I mentioned one already, which is we tend to think I am a journalist, therefore I can do everything, being available all the time, and I'm a superhero. And I think that we need to realize that we're human beings and that having mental health issues doesn't, it's basically normal, and might not affect your reality. I did suffer depression when I started my career as a TV journalist. I later suffered burnout, and I still have a Pulitzer Prize. So I think that we need to start talking about it openly and not thinking that if you have mental health issues, you need to be put in a corner. And that's what is happening in many, many newsrooms. And then the other idea to challenge is that being a good journalist means being 24/7 available, because I think that that's very spread out and it's causing a lot of journalists to burn out and quit the profession. I don't want to come back to a newsroom because it's an unhealthy culture. And I think that this is what I can speak about journalism because it's the profession I care about, but this is a reality in many other professions, as I said, especially in those professions where we really believe in what we do, community organizers, social entrepreneurs. And we need to start talking openly about the fact that we're human beings and we need to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And in journalism, it's also key to start thinking about how we can do constructive journalism and a solutions-oriented approach. And I think that that's missing in journalism, but luckily there's a trend on constructive journalism that is growing. And I would totally recommend the Solutions Journalism Network, which is actually pushing for more positive news, but it's not just positive versus negative news. It is news that create a conversation and engage readers beyond just publishing the story.
Yes, and those conversations are exactly what we're looking for. So I'm definitely going to be checking out that resource. So for those who have seen The Social Dilemma, we have kind of a question about that. David, maybe you could kick us off with this one. In The Social Dilemma, we really saw the polarization of our society due to the way that information is really segmented and delivered. And so I think after watching that, some people were really interested. Okay, so what does the path forward look like? What are some things that we can do to change this? Oh, you're still on mute. There we go.
I'm sorry, I dropped my mouse trying to unmute myself. So I really recommend one of the most recent episodes of our podcast called The Courage to Connect, which is an interview with founders of Braver Angels. They're a network of people who facilitate conversations that cross political divides, that are really structured to help us see our shared humanity rather than seeing the, in many ways, kind of distorted versions of one another that social media has presented. And what they've found, along with folks like Living Room Conversations, is that when we can take the time to be in those conversations where people see their humanity across political divides, understand it becomes a lot more easier. A lot easier, and we're able to have a authentic picture of where one another are coming from, rather than this sort of caricature of people on the other side that often winds up being what's reverberated. So I'd recommend that listening. I'd recommend checking out both Braver Angels and Living Room Conversations as resources. Curious what other panelists have to say about this. And then I know we have one more question for Emmy too.
Would anybody else like to share about their kind of experience with taking action after watching The Social Dilemma?
Yeah, I'd be happy to chime in here. I actually work so closely with the big tech companies that I think The Social Dilemma definitely was very one-sided on their viewpoint on everything. So it is like we work solely with them, with the tech companies. And what's cool is they're actually bringing students in so that they can actually see the work that they're doing to make them like healthier. Like I think it's interesting, TikTok just shared, I was at a session with them, that they actually, after 30 minutes of you viewing TikTok, it pops up saying, do you realize you've actually been watching this for 30 minutes? You might want to go try a different new activity. And they're doing that for their mental health, right? So same thing with the question about, it being based on the different things. I think that needs to come down to at what point is it the tech companies and when is it a human piece? I think with the cancel culture, like this is such a real thing. Like when I'm working with youth, they're afraid to post anything because they're so afraid that if they say something wrong, they're going to get canceled. I think we need to go back to being humans again and like realizing it's okay to have different viewpoints. We do an activity where it literally is like having that conversation of making it come out, of why promote what you hate or bash what you hate? Why can't you promote what you love instead, right? Like it's okay to promote what you love instead of bashing what you hate, instead of doing that whole cancel culture. Because right now it's students are torn, even adults are torn, mask or no mask, right? All lives, Black lives, Republican, Democrat. And it's these different kind of conversations that definitely we need to see both sides, and we need to understand where people are coming from, because usually it's coming down to that people are hurt and they want to be heard. And we need to be able to hear more people. And how you hear more people is, yeah, you should be on social media. You should be following different things and different viewpoints so you can hear both sides. You can actually understand both sides. And I think that's important for us as adults to know, but then we also need to make sure we're being role models to our future, which I actually don't think Kayla and Emmy are our future. They're 100% are right now. Like, we need them more than ever than right now, because they're part of the solution and they're here today to be able to have this. And we need to do something about it. And it is walking side by side with the students and the tech companies to understand we're all in this together and go back to being, good humans and good people.
Thank you, Kim. And there's so much, I think, charge in what you said, because there are so many different kind of change agents and stakeholders in this conversation. And at the Digital Wellness Collective, we like to say that we're focused on enhancing human relationships through the intentional use and development of technology. And it might not necessarily be one or the other. Like, we might need to look at our own habits and work with tech companies on how things are being changed. And I think that will really be the sweet spot. But, having Kyla and Emmy here to be able to speak to this is so valuable. And Emmy, we did get one question. Kyla, maybe you can chime in here too, about social bullying. So the question is, how do you kind of recommend managing or eliminating that when, like, one child can be bullied by hundreds of kids at the same time on social media? Like, what would you kind of personally recommend to either prevent or combat that from happening?
Yeah, I want to first kind of take a step back, because I know that, especially for my school and other schools that I have attended throughout the years, there are pages on social media where students of a school will create an anonymous page where kids can go in, submit things, and then that page will post what people are saying about other people without a tag attached to who said it. And I've seen my friends, I've seen my peers, and I've also experienced bullying through pages like that. And things like that can be very harmful, because I've seen kids get outed on anonymous confession pages. I've seen kids be called out for things that they didn't do. But people look to those pages and automatically assume it's true and go run with it. And I think a big thing that we can do, not only as like what Kyla and I can do as younger people and what you guys can do as adults, is to reach out and help, right? Kim was saying earlier that a lot of kids are turning to each other for help. And I don't think that that's a bad idea at all, especially in situations like this, because you can feel so alone. However, I think that it's super important that we have the ability to turn to adults. And a lot of times when we do turn to adults, the first thing that kind of comes out is, well, then delete the app, or don't look at it, or you shouldn't have been on social media anyways. And it's those things of like kind of slapping our hands and telling us like, we were in the wrong. It makes us feel like these things are our fault. So I feel like a big thing that we can do, no matter how old you are, is to listen and understand and make sure that this person that is getting bullied doesn't feel alone. And also stop making confession pages, but that's a topic for another day.
Thank you. That is wonderful input. And I think that people post things that they never would have posted otherwise, just because people can't really see who they are. And while that might feel like freedom to certain people, it's also so destructive. So, Kyla, do you have anything that you'd like to add on this topic before we wrap up for the day?
Yeah, sure. So I also unfortunately do not have a root of the problem answer, but what I will say is that another thing that I think that people should be more cognizant about when these things are happening on the digital world is that they do permeate into your real life as well. They aren't just comments and posts that exist on the internet, but they really do play an active role in people's day-to-day lives at school. Something might be posted at night. It's a big deal in the morning. And I think that one big thing that could happen that will at least help the result of the actual root problem is destigmatizing mental health problems, destigmatizing asking for help, like Emmy said, destigmatizing not being okay all the time. I think that those are all things that social media actively does not help with, like especially when you just want to show, like one of you guys said earlier, the highlight reel of your life. So I think that there are definitely small things we could do to help with the result. But as far as the root cause goes, I wish that I knew, because my school also has confession pages and they are very, very damaging. And I've seen people be the victim of such pages. And I personally do not know when or how those will stop. So I think that there are ways to help with the resulting hurt from that, but I don't know if there's anything as of right now that I could think of to stop the creation of the pages themselves. So yeah, that's what I have.
Thank you, Kyla. Wow. So much wisdom in one place. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Mark, Kim, Emmy, David, Kyla. I think it is critical to continue having these intergenerational conversations to look at the combination of youth expertise, with kind of support from older generations to figure out what solutions are actually going to work for different age groups, for different industries. There is so much charge here. We're literally talking about the future of wellness and mental health as we know it. So for those in the audience, I hope you check out all of these resources. The recording will be up in a little bit so you can replay at your convenience. And thank you all so much for tuning in. Happy World Happiness Week. And we wish you a wonderful day, evening, morning, whatever time zone you're in. Thank you all so much.